Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building brands, businesses, and a career you love with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. Welcome back to another episode of Unemployed and Afraid and another year of the pod. I am geared up to keep bringing you these inspiring stories of brand and business creators to encourage you to keep going, building, starting over, and keep creating a career you love, no matter where you are on the journey. Now, I don't know about you, but I am not a huge fan of resolutions and the new year, new me vibes. I definitely used to be, but there's something about this journey of self-employment that has taught me that really every day, every minute, every second is an opportunity for a new me. It simply has to be said that this shit is really hard. Sometimes you have to invoke a new year vibe on a Wednesday afternoon to pick yourself back up, make whatever changes you need to do, and try again. What I am quickly becoming a big fan of, though, is figuring out what I want to leave behind anytime the rebuild feels get me. Maybe self-sabotaging levels of self-expectation, for example, personal vulnerable share there, saying yes to too many things because of a scarcity complex, and just generally seeing where my energy is best spent and making sure that I'm giving myself the best chance of success and letting go of what I need to. Maybe this is something that you're toying with at the moment as well. This sometimes means disappointing people. I had to pull out of a committee that I've been helping to bring the TEDx Hobart event to life, for example. Side note, if you're in Hobart and listening to this podcast before Feb 18, grab your tickets to this epically inspiring event. But I felt awful pulling out of that commitment before the event was happening, but I just knew I was stretched far too thin and that everything else would suffer if I didn't make a change there. Same thing with my ceramics. If you don't know already, I make and sell some pretty cool ceramics, if I don't say so myself, which I love, but I don't have the time available to make for others anymore without forcing it into the cracks of the day. And that's not fun. And so that's it. No more production. I'm only going to be making for myself when I feel the desire to. And that's a real tough one, a real tough call for me to make because I built a bit of an identity and a community around my making. But that's the thing with this self-employment evolution journey. Things change, people change, and the journey evolves exactly as it needs to. You just have to be open to it and not hold on to any one thing past its use-by date. You just got to give it a little bit of a shrug and an, oh, well, who cares what anyone thinks? Who cares if I lose some community in the pivot? The only person who loses if I don't make a change and listen to what I need is me. Again, maybe something that you might resonate with, hence the vulnerable sharing. But with this newfound space, I'm growing an exciting new business, more on that soon. And of course, growing this podcast for you, incredible listener, to bring you more of the good stuff. All of this has turned into the world's longest segue from my latest guest, the first of 2023, who too made space to explore what might be next. And like so many of us relate to, his quote unquote thing didn't reveal itself right away. It took a few space makers and a few trials to get there. In this chat today, we talk about a key question to ask yourself that will uncover your next move. Why going back to working for others isn't a regression in your self-employment journey. Big one. How to handle the roller coaster of this situation, why creativity beyond the arts is really important, and the need to get comfortable with networking. He is an engaging energy giver and someone you want to come back to and listen again and again. Please enjoy my chat with Wade Kingsley. I'm joined today by Wade Kingsley, a creativity coach, consultant, facilitator, and founder of the Ideas Business, who help businesses use creative thinking to solve problems. Named one of Australia's top 100 fastest growing startups by the Australian Financial Review in 2021, the Ideas Business has kept growing through the conception of the Creative Champions course, designed to take Wade's experience in one-on-one coaching to help people learn how to be better creative problem solvers. He's the Australian ambassador for World Creativity and Innovation Week, has a focus on giving people the confidence to unlock and share their natural creative abilities, and believes everyone is born creative. A man that not only has the idea, he makes it real. I cannot wait to learn all about the journey of creating the ideas business. Wade, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks for making me sound way more important than I am with that intro.
That's what I'm here to do. You got to pump each other up a little bit, hey?
Totally.
Love it. I got a really easy question for you to kick us off. I think you'll like this one. How would your low allergy cat describe you?
Well, the low allergy cat and I have got a little history. So I am allergic to cats. And for anyone who's got a daughter and the daughter has an ability to wrap around your little finger, you'll understand this story. So I've always refused to have a cat. Don't have anything against them. I'm much more of a dog person, but the allergy has been a nice cover story for me not having to get a cat. And I was ganged up on by her and her two grandmothers to say, come on, you've got to get Emmy a cat. And I said, okay, if you can find a low allergy cat, I'll consider it. Now, I reckon I said the words consider it and they were sort of still coming out of my mouth and the Google search had commenced. And I then said, look, the only criteria is I don't want one of those hairless cats. I don't want a cat.
Creepy.
It's got to look attractive to me. That's the criteria. And I think we had the cat within like 3 days of that happening. So Ari is his name and we get along well now. And I think he described me as that guy in the house, because I'm not the feeder, I'm not the cleaning up of the litter, I'm just around, we're in each other's universe. So I'm that guy to him.
I love that. That's a very good story.
Are you a dog or a cat person? You're a dog person, aren't you?
I'm a dog person, yeah, particularly a pug person.
Nice.
I'm one of those.
Not one of those. Okay, great. I got it.
Yeah, she makes an appearance pretty regularly on this pod in the background. She refuses to stay quiet, no matter how nicely I ask. Wade, take me back to before that beautiful bio. So before the ideas business was real, right back to the beginning, who were you?
Who was I? Well, I was a kid that loved radio. When I was about 7 or 8, I remember we had to draw a picture in class of what we wanted to be when we grow up. And a lot of people were drawing, firemen, policemen, pilots, space astronaut, whatever. And I remember distinctly drawing what was called then a disc jockey, radio DJ. And I think I loved radio because my mum was a huge radio listener. The radio was always on in the house. Like, we were one of those families had a radio in like 3 different rooms. It was always on. My mum was quite a young mum, so she had me when she was 19. So a lot of the music that she listened to was very contemporary when I was growing up. So I was a kid that fell in love with radio, and I fell in love with, I think, the idea that people were making things up, that they were kind of just talking and out it goes into the world, and they were playing songs, and it didn't feel confected. It felt natural, felt real. And I think so that kind of, in a weird kind of way, now looking back on it after all this time, there was a bit of an origin story there in creativity, because I knew media was for me. I knew that. And at one stage I wanted to be a journalist, and that's kind of where my studies went to. But then I didn't get into journalism in uni because my grades weren't good enough, but I still love media and still thought about writing and all this stuff. But there was something about making things up as opposed to producing things. So like, making a film is a 2-year process or a 5-year process, and every detail has to, and that wasn't me. I was like, let's just do this and try that. Let's do this, try that. So radio kind of appealed to me. So I was definitely a kid that loved radio, and I was fortunate enough growing up in Adelaide to be able to get my first job in radio at a radio station in Adelaide, whereas a lot of people in radio have to travel to the country to get their first job. I was really fortunate to do it in my hometown.
And what a beautiful hometown to do it in as well. I mean, Adelaide gal, so
yes, Adelaide represent.
Yes. And it can be a pretty addictive industry, radio. We both know that. So I'd love to know about the moment you decided to step out of the wireless and into your own thing.
Well, I don't want to say the words midlife crisis, but let's just kind of put that out there. Some people buy sports cars. Some people live overseas. My thing when I turned 40 was, and when I was 40, my kids were about 6 and 4. And I'd had at that stage a very lucky career in radio. And I say lucky because I'm a firm believer in hard work, but I'm also a believer in luck. I was lucky, first of all, to get that job in my hometown radio station. then I was lucky to be, that radio station had just been bought by a bigger company that were in a growth phase. They were about to start what became the Nova Network. So I was lucky to be there and lucky to be working with people who wanted to teach me, lucky to be with people who let me make mistakes in the jobs that I had and learn and grow. So I'd had about 20 years of doing that. And I guess the turning point for me was, do I want to do another 20 years of radio? So when I hit 40, I was like, I started at age 20. Do I want to do another 20? It kind of felt like a contract renewal on a grand scale, like a life contract renewal. And I knew the answer was probably not. Not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because I just thought, if this is the only thing I do in my life, would I be happy with that? Like try and do that exercise where you're at the end of your life, looking back, visualizing that and go, would I be happy with only having been a radio guy? As good as that is. And I decided no, but what I didn't know is what I wanted to do instead. I knew it would be something in the creative services arena, which can be quite multidisciplined. And I quit without a job to go to, which was a big step. Talk about being unemployed and afraid. I decided that I would leave Nova then after a long time. And I had a long notice period because I had been there for such a long time. So I think I had like a 4-month notice period or something like that. So I decided to quit, had no real idea what I was going to do. But then something magical happened, which I tell other people about all the time, is when you put yourself out to the universe comes back to you. And thankfully, I'd had some good relationships with people over that time. I had been able to not position myself as like I was a radio guy, but I could do other things. And so the minute I announced I was out, I found that people came to me and said, oh, would you like to do things like this? Things I would never have considered. And the main one was working in an ad agency. I'd always liked the look of it, probably romanticized through Mad Men and other shows like that. But I liked the idea of creative problem solving as a career, which kind of what agencies do. You solve business problems using creativity. So I went to an ad agency just for a step change. So that was kind of the moment where I just kind of went, you know what, I want to do something different for the next 20. But I didn't know what it was going to be, honestly. It was not the ideas business first. It was, what else could I do?
How did the ad agency go? What was that experience like?
Oh, look, it was a bit awkward, actually, probably for a couple of reasons. One is I did have that romanticized version of the Mad Men style. And for those that don't know, like the agency world for media is kind of divided up a bit, or marketing, I should say, is divided up. There are creative agencies, which is what you kind of see personified in Mad Men, kind of like coming up with ideas all the time and making great art for TV commercials and outdoor billboards and stuff. Then there are media agencies, which basically do nothing much but buy media. Now, while that's an important thing, it's not highly creative. It's probably a little bit more technical. It's very data driven. And so I went to a media agency, and in retrospect, I probably could have done a creative agency job instead. But the media agency taught me a lot. I actually felt like, gee, I wish I had known all this stuff back when I was younger. So I got a real education through working there, but it sort of didn't feel right. Like I liked the people, I kind of liked the environment, but it just felt like I'd taken a step out of something I was good at and comfortable in into an area that I was really quite struggling with. And the weird thing too, Kim, is I reckon I knew it in the first week. It just didn't feel right. But of course I hadn't done anything else. So I'm like, well, it's probably just me. I'll just need to adjust to this. I stuck it out for a couple of years. And then I got to the end of that and thought, no, this doesn't feel right. Again, I don't know what it's going to be. And again, I quit without a job to go to. I just thought, well, all right, it worked the first time, letting the universe look after me. I wanted for it to work again. So I resigned. This time I was unemployed for a bit longer. I sort of went straight from Nova to the agency through that sort of notice period time. This time I quit, wasn't required to give a lot of notice. So probably spent, I think, from memory, around about sort of 5 to 6 months on the sideline. And that's where the genesis for the ideas business came, because I started thinking, right, well, I've kind of been working for big legacy media companies or media holding groups in the case of agencies. And now what legacy do I want to create for my own kids? And this is kind of like that thread line of the midlife crisis. So it kind of became a bit of a like, what legacy do I want to leave? What's something I can create that my kids can work in if they want to, no pressure, but if they wanted to join the family business, quote unquote, then they could. So the genesis of the ideas business came about in that time, but I also got a radio offer again, an offer to work back for another radio company called SCA, Southern Cross Stereo, which came out of the blue. It was lovely to get. And this time I accepted that job because I was unemployed and because I'd never worked there. And I thought, well, this could be fun. And a side note, at the exact same time, Hamish and Andy announced they were coming back to radio. They'd been off and they were coming back. So I thought, well, this is a pretty good time to join a company with, Hamish and Andy coming back. This could only end well. And so I joined SCA, but I did it this time with eyes wide open. I deliberately went there knowing I wouldn't be there for a career. I'd be there for a job. So I'll do this job, however long this job takes. And I will use this as a learning opportunity. So I'll do what's required of me. I'll deliver what they need, but I'm going to take this as a bit of an education on how I should run my own creative services business, because the job was effectively setting up a creative services team at SCA. So I spent lots of conversations with lots of different people this time. I spent a lot of time with the CFO at the time, understanding how the machinations of running a business works. They're a publicly listed company, they're a huge company. So I learned a lot. I was kind of doing an on-the-job education, which I had sort of one eye on what I was doing there and one eye on what could I do whenever I finish up here, whenever that was going to be. But I knew it would be just a short duration this time, not the same length of service I did at Nova.
The two big jumps when you're kind of putting yourself out there, and even knowing that your last employed role had an end date, that takes quite the trust muscle to go into. Do you feel like there's been anything in your life that has helped you develop that trust muscle so that you can let the universe do its good work?
Oh, God, what a great question. I think I've always been an optimistic person. I'd probably say I sit somewhere between optimism and realism, but I certainly have never been a glass half empty. I've never looked at a situation and gone, oh, well, this is going to go badly or this is going to go wrong. And probably what I've picked up along the way has become a bit more spiritual. It's become a bit more the universe is looking after me. I think I don't know if this is a true thing or not, but being the eldest child helps, I think, because sometimes the eldest child gets told all the good things. They get told all the, you're great, to this day, and I absolutely believe this is not true, but to this day, my mum swears I've never done anything wrong as a kid. Now, I'm a parent. I know how much kids do things that are wrong. Anyway, I grew up with that kind of mentality that I was a good kid and I was, curious and eager to try things. And I think the eager to try things has probably been, if we're looking for kind of like a magic ingredient or a reason why, I'm not afraid of failing. Failure to me, as long as you're failing forward, is a learning opportunity. And I sort of had that in my head early on, and maybe this goes back to that radio about making things up. It's like, well, if you make something up and it doesn't work, well, you've always got tomorrow's radio show. Like nothing was forever. So I lived in this world that nothing was forever. Everything could be redone and restarted. So that started there. I think when I got my first radio job at age 20, I had people who said, look, you're only young. You will make mistakes and we're going to support you with those mistakes. So every step of the way, I had a supportive environment through school, parenting, early career. And so probably the muscle that's built up is I'm not afraid to try things. And that could also mean I'm not afraid to try risky things like quitting a job without one to go to. Because at the end of the day, I always have the attitude that there are always jobs out there. Now, there might be jobs that I don't want to do. Like I'm not necessarily wanting to go and, stack shelves at the supermarket. But at the end, if worse comes to worse and I'm absolutely out of money and I need to put my kids through school and feed my family, I'll be able to find a job. So it may not be the ideal job, but it's that kind of safety net has always been there, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I think we forget that sometimes, that there is options, even if you can't see them yet. It's just that openness to knowing that the option is there at a time. And if you have to pick that up and look at it then, you can do that then, not doing that forward planning.
Absolutely. And like this happens a lot, and it probably happens to you too, is that people come up to you now and go, oh, how did you do it? How did you go out on your own? One thing I always say to people is nothing is forever. So if you decide to go out on your own and it doesn't work, you can go back to a corporate job. And don't think of it as a regressive step. Think of it as, like, I think of my career right now, and I'm 46 and I've been working for 26 years, roughly full time. 20 of those years have been in media. So even if tomorrow I said, that's it, I'm done with the ideas business, I want to go back to media for whatever reason, I've got 20 years in the bank. Like that doesn't devalue. It doesn't mean I can walk into any job I like. I'm not that silly, but it also means that I'm not starting from scratch. And I think sometimes people are worried about taking the leap themselves or doing that thing because they kind of feel like they can't reverse it. It's like everything is changeable. And if the last few years have taught us anything, it's like certainty is a bit of a myth. We will have times where the rug gets pulled from underneath us, and how we respond to that is what's important. And I'm a big, you can only control what you can control person. The SCA offer came out of nowhere, which was nice, but really, if I hadn't have got that offer, I would have found something else, and that could have been, I had to go sit through 100 job applications and 50 interviews, and I might have had to go down that path, and that's fine. But I never thought there was nothing. I never thought I would absolutely be destitute. I'd absolutely have nothing of value to offer people. It's just redefined itself over time. So that confidence, I think, comes from failure is okay. And to parlay that into the work I do now as a creative coach is that the biggest barrier to people using their creative confidence is the fear of failure. People go, oh, I could never write a hit song, or I could never paint an award-winning painting. It's like, because you're setting the bar too high. Like, do you think Paul McCartney started writing songs with the view that he'd win Grammys? Like, you write songs because you've got something to say. You paint things because you want to express yourself. So the barrier has to be realistic, and you build on that strength as you deploy your creative acts. So I think I'm the same. Like, I didn't know anything about starting a business when I started one, but why would that be a barrier? Like, I should be, first and foremost, I should be a student. If I'm a student, then I will learn. If I seek to learn, then I'll grow. And the growth then I can apply to whatever task or opportunity I've got in front of me.
I'm just about to snap my neck with my nodding encouragement here because I just couldn't agree more with that. You're really back to your point on the fear of regression and how it looks on the outside to give something a go and then reverse it and go do something else for a little bit. That is a huge barrier to getting started. And I think it's really nice that you expressed that so articulately to say it is absolutely perfectly fine. I had the same. I went back and did 6 months in a corporate role because I needed the cash injection. I needed to keep going because I was still on the journey. I wasn't ready to go, full head in. It's important.
And that's important too, Kim, because I think what happens is people feel like it's an all or nothing bet. I've got friends that have done similar, left a corporate career to start their own thing and are still doing it. And I've also got friends who have left a corporate career, want to start their own thing and gone back to it. And to a T, the ones that have gone back feel like they've failed. And it's like, it's not a failure. Like I would gladly, if someone walked in the door today and said, I've got this project, it's a 3-month role, you can run your business at the same time doing it. And I was generally interested in the project, I would take that. But for the same reason, like you're not crazy, you're running a business. Cash is kind of important and it pays for other things. So I feel like sometimes people sort of bet the farm on doing their own thing. And the reality is it's just another evolution of you. It's an evolution of your desire to explore new worlds, do different work, interact with different people, work across different industries and categories. It's not good or bad that you go and start your own thing and go back. It is what it is. And I always encourage people when they're thinking of doing it is to understand that it's a roller coaster and you've got to be up for the ride. Because there are times where it's awesome and there are times where it's awful. And that sort of roller coaster of awesome to awful is working for yourself because you are sales, you are marketing, you are product delivery, you are customer complaints, you are website, you are social, you're everything, right? You are admin, you're invoicing, you're whatever. And so you've got to understand that it's the collective parts that you're doing. And there are days where I've certainly over the last 5 years, I've had days where I can see 12 months ahead and go, this is fantastic. And I've absolutely had days, particularly through COVID, where I go, I don't think I'm going to be in business next week. And if you're not up for the ride, that's probably the caution point is accept that it's a ride, go on that journey and learn through it and know that the bad days will come, or there'll also be good days. But if you kind of feel like it's all one-way traffic, I'm going to get on, it's going to be great. And oh no, I fell off the ride, so I've got to go back to a corporate job. Reframe it. The whole thing is a roller coaster. And if you can ride the bumps, then you're in a sort of a good spot.
I could not agree more. Now, tell me about how the ideas business looked when you first were going out into this journey.
Okay, so this is an interesting story because what I basically decided to do, the very first decision I made was, how do I build a business creatively? That is, how do I be creative with the building of a business? Because the one thing I knew for sure was, actually two things I knew for sure. The first was I didn't know what the market would want me to do. So I kind of knew my value sat somewhere in the creative services universe. Let's just say that's a very broad term for things that sit in kind of like the marketing, branding, media sort of space and doing things where it's about creative problem solving. But, I wasn't a trained graphic designer. I'm not an art director. I can write a bit of copy, but I'm not a trained copywriter. So I didn't have like a discipline, like a trade that I could fall back on. So I didn't know what the market would say. Yes, we want you to do that. That was one thing. The second thing was I thought that if I just was starting a business and it was going to be like every other business and like every business handbook tells you to do it, I would be bored, because I get bored quite easily. That's probably one of the side effects of working in radio, is that if things aren't moving at a cracking pace and you're not changing things up, it can kind of become a bit routine. And I sort of abhor routine, which is both a strength and a weakness. So I knew that I wanted to set up a business structure that was creatively structured. So the first thing I decided on was, I don't want to get pigeonholed into one thing. So the ideas business name actually came out of the fact that all I know for sure was that I would be in the ideas business. And I was kind of sitting around one day going, well, what am I going to be? I'm going to be in the ideas business. I'm like, oh, what if that's available? Yes, theideasbusiness.com, sold. And so the ideas business motto effectively is that we're a business of ideas. So within the business, if you think of the ideas business company as pretty much like a venture capital business for creative services. So that's kind of like the umbrella. Underneath that, I do many different things, invest my time and money in very different things, and that's on purpose. So in the same way that if you're running a share portfolio, you don't just have all your shares in one category, you diversify. I diversify across a couple of different products and industries. So I thought, right, let's see where the market takes me. So the very first thing I was asked to do was some branding projects. So, okay, cool, I'll do some branding projects. I got some subcontractors to help in on that kind of work. The next thing I knew I wanted to do was build some sort of workshop or training program. So I started rolling that out. COVID hit. I was sort of, how many years was I in the business then? Probably about 2.5 years in. COVID hit. And I quickly thought, well, the world's going online, so I'll try and parlay some of my workshop and creative training programs into an online course. I did that. But, I'm actually in the process now, because I'm sort of 5 years in, of doing my next 5-year plan. And I can tell you there's more ideas to come. Like, there's a mental health initiative that I'm working on. There's going to be more of an agency sort of based product, but not like it looks now, more of a freelancer based sort of agency. There's a joint venture with a company from Europe on a particular area. So what I'm trying to say in very long form here is that I think that I like the idea of a variety of projects that also helps diversify the services of the business. So if no one wants workshops anymore, that's okay. I've got all these other things going on over here. Now, the business experts will tell you, oh, you've got to stick to one thing and you've got to focus on that and you've got to drum that home, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, that's fine for other people. I just, like, why would I go to the trouble and the risk of starting my own business if it's going to be just doing one service? And I know enough about myself to know that I would do that for a couple of years. I'd get bored and I'd do something else. And I'm like, I'd much rather plant some seeds everywhere. So, I don't have like 20 things on the go. I've got sort of 5 things on the go. And I want to plant a few seeds. And what happens is one grows quickly and I use the benefits, as in the financial benefits, to reinvest in another area that's not growing quickly. So I might go, well, I want to grow this area, so I'm going to invest in some marketing or some resources to build that product, or, tech to build that app, or whatever it looks like. So I kind of run, I wouldn't say as a not-for-profit, but I reinvest everything back into all of these other ideas. So the ideas business is the business of ideas.
I love that, because yes, I find it very difficult to be able to concentrate on any one thing for too long, for fear of losing the opportunities that might be floating around. So I completely relate to that. I can imagine that moment when you put it out to the world and it's like, kind of, here I am, I'm doing this, knowing that it was going to be something that was going to be evolving for yourself. Would have been kind of, I'm imagining a kitten on claws, or maybe a hairless cat on claws. But tell me about that experience, like going live, seeking your first clients, that kind of first tumultuous period.
Well, the missing part of the story I should have told you up front is it's an absolutely important one in the journey. So I don't mean to kind of now just bring it up as a surprise element, but I generally forgot to tell you. So when I took that job at SCA, I said to them, I'm not going to be here for a long time. I'll absolutely do the job. But I announced, not publicly, but I announced to people that hired me that I was going to do this as more like a project role. I'd be a full-time employee, I'd do it. But I wanted to start my own business. I didn't know what that was going to be then, but I said, look, just so you know, let's be transparent. I'm here for a period of time. Now, in my head, that was going to be a year. It turned out to be 2, because I was really enjoying it. I had great people. So I got to the sort of nearly to the end of the second year, and I went to my boss at the time, who was an amazing guy called Brian Gallagher, who's the head of sales at SCA and still is. And I said to him, look, he started after me. I said, you weren't here when I started, but just so you know, this is the story I told at the time, which was I wasn't going to be here forever. And I said, look, I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to start my own business. And he said to me, great, can I be your first client? I'm like, yes, I don't know what I'm doing yet. He goes, doesn't matter. I said, I don't know what I'm going to charge. He goes, doesn't matter. He said he had had a similar experience happen to him, where he had a boss that he said, I'm going to start my own, and his boss said that. So there was a bit of a nice pay it forward moment, but he was genuine in his desire to go, I'd love to keep you involved in the business. So that gave me the parachute to push myself off the cliff. So it's an important lesson, I think, for startup people who are kind of do the all or nothing thing. Like, I've got a job one day and I have no income the next. The very first thing you should always try is see if you can consult back to the place that you're working, or see if you can offer services to the place that they know you and like you. Because I'm sure most businesses would much rather keep you in the talent pool than lose you. And you might be able to just negotiate it on your terms, and then that can be a starting point. So that made it less scary for sure, because I went into it knowing at that stage I had a 12-month consulting agreement, but I used that 12 months quite tactically. I did work for SCA, but I also did a SWOT analysis on myself and thought, I have absolutely no profile outside of Australian radio. My first task is to build profile. And knowing it was going to be a longer slog. So I decided to start attending conferences, networking, which I was never a great networker and probably still kind of, don't really like a lot to this day, the superficial sort of nature of it, but knew I had to do it. So I threw myself into that pool. And I decided that across that year, through the networking, if interesting challenges came up, I'd go, I think I can help you solve that problem. And sometimes you're selling confidence. Sometimes you're out there going, I feel confident that I can help you, and I don't necessarily have that skill, but I can learn it. Or I know some people that can help me, and I could put together a team that can do it. So I often think that, sales is a bit of a confidence game, and knowing that now I was selling myself, which I found really hard to do, but it's a necessity, is I could get around the feeling of selling Wade Kingsley by selling the ideas business. And I felt much more comfortable selling a brand than I did selling myself. So it was scary, but I did it with a very good parachute, thanks to Brian.
It's so interesting. One of the questions I wanted to ask you in this chat was, how does it feel to be the face of your business and the challenges that brings up? Because I think that is a really interesting challenge when you're in a service-based industry. It is as much about you as it is about the work that you're doing. Has it ever presented any challenges for you? Has it ever made you feel like you want to hide?
Yeah, probably not hide, but I'm not comfortable with it. And it's odd because I've got a little bit of a split personality on this one. Like, I can stand up in front of a room of 3,000 people and do a keynote or a workshop and be completely comfortable. It feels like home to me, right? I'm happy to do it. But if I have to talk about myself in a way, like, I can talk to you now because I know you, we're having a conversation about the business. But if I was talking to someone about, hey, I'm Wade Kingsley, hire me, I find that difficult. And I think the reason I chose to be a brand, not a person selling myself, the ideas business versus Wade Kingsley, was because, first of all, I wanted to build something that would outlast me. So I knew it wasn't going to be Wade Kingsley Incorporated, because at some point I don't want to retire and the asset is valueless. I wanted to build it. So if my kids wanted to take it over, or I sold it or whatever, it would have some value. But when you're selling yourself, I think the thing I found the hardest is how to get the marketing right. The irony is, you give me a brand challenge or a marketing brief and I can help you with that brand. And this is true. I've spoken to lots of people who have this problem too. Branding yourself, marketing yourself is a challenge, because it's almost like you can't remove yourself from yourself.
100%.
And yeah, trying to kind of articulate who you are and your offering, and maybe there's a bit of Australianness in this too, that, you're a bit of a wanker if you're kind of promoting yourself. So I kind of try and straddle the line between promoting the brand and promoting myself. I usually promote the brand when I'm talking about the services we offer and the value we can provide. And I talk about myself in the context of, I can come and help make an experience better for you. So I can run a workshop, I can facilitate a session, I can coach you on, if it feels more like it's a one-to-one service provision, I feel more comfortable. But when it's like pitching for a job or whatever, I do hide behind the brand on purpose. It's more of a comfortable space, I think.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I'm sure the listeners will absolutely relate to that too. It's a real challenge. It's an endless challenge. I would be remiss not to pick your brain a little bit about creativity, but from the lens of brands and businesses getting started, what do you think IMO or IUO, in your opinion, would be the biggest misconception that a business owner or a prospective business owner has about the role that creativity is going to play in their venture?
Look, creativity is a currency that doesn't devalue. You can't use it all up. No matter what industry or product you have or what service you can offer, your human creativity, despite all the recent chat about AI and bots and all that, human creativity has limitless potential. And what I try and encourage people to do is to try and be creative with their work. So if your product is selling bottles of water, there are people out there, other people who sell bottles of water. And the thing that's going to make you distinct are things such as the taste of your product, of course, but let's just say most water tastes roughly the same. The way the product is packaged and presented, let's just say that most bottled water is kind of in the same place. The thing that's going to set you apart then is your creativity. So how do you market it? How do you present it? How do you deliver the customer experience? How do you creatively use data to tell stories? So, creativity is one of those things that unfortunately has a lot of misconceptions. It's not just about painting. It's not just about music. It's not just about the arts. They are applications of creativity. But business creativity and commercial creativity fuels growth. If you can tap into a way to sell more creatively, then you're going to grow your business faster. If you can tap into ways to market more creatively or promote yourself more creatively, you're going to grow your business faster. If you can create products and services in a different way and use your creativity, then you're going to have more to sell. So to me, it's kind of like it's the lifeblood. I know it sounds a bit cliche to say that, but businesses that have been successful over time, the one ingredient they all have in common at some point in the journey is creativity has fueled the growth. So I'm a huge believer in it. I'm guessing most of your audience don't need to be convinced on that. But I feel like it's also something that people need to value higher up the food chain. And I guess because I come at things from a creative place or a creative problem-solving place, I'm not just, as I said, starting a business that follows a business textbook. My business plan looks completely different to every other business plan you can find online on purpose because I'm creative with the plan itself. And that fuels my desire to make that dream come to life.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's such a struggle that so many of us think that you have to have a unicorn idea in order to even have a business in the first place. But back to your point on water, yes, of course, there's a million brands of water. There's a million brands of hairdressing salons, of consulting businesses, of anything, but there's only one you and the way that you can come up and think about that. And I think so many people just get stuck at that. Oh, I've got this really great idea. Something I really enjoy and I want to follow this thread. Or I kind of want to keep it going, but you give it a Google search, see how many of that product already exists and then just give up. So I think that's an important message to give, which is to apply a little bit of creativity, and who cares however many competitors there are out there. You got something unique to say, you got to go for it.
Well, and at the heart of every business is you're solving a customer's problem. And so creativity is problem solving. And at its absolute core, it's solving a problem in a way that hasn't yet been solved. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be completely innovative. It might be 99.9% the same as another way, but the 0.1 is something different. That's still creative. And I think when you're thinking about your own business, the Seth Godin thing is your first 100 customers will come from 100 people you know. And so what you want to be able to do is go, what problem am I good at solving for people? What skill do I have that solves problems? So let's just say you're a graphic designer. So you can say, the problem I solve for people is helping them interpret their brand in a visual way. That's the problem I'm actually solving for people. And then you try and find, first of all, one person who's willing to pay you to do that, and then two, and then 5, and then 10, and then 100, and then you're sort of in business. But that's really what you've got to focus on is what problem can I solve? Where can I add value? And like I've only got one sort of internal mantra, which I don't think I've shared publicly, so this will be the first time, about my business. And my business mantra for myself is strive to be of value. So I think the origin, everything's an Einstein quote, but I think the origin was an Einstein quote about don't strive to be a success, strive to be of value. If I can always strive to be of value, then I trust that the world will look after me. If I find people that think that I've got some value to add, then that's a customer. If I find a problem to be solved and I can add some value, that could be a product. But striving to be of value is a great lesson for business as it is for life. Be of value to people and you'll see that value returned.
What sort of value might you be thinking about creating in this next little part of your journey? Anything you want to share about what's next?
Well, I've got a few things. Like I'm never short of ideas, which is a blessing and a curse. I'm never feeling like I'm kind of like dry.
Very on brand for you.
Yeah, well, and look, the inside joke, of course, is you're the ideas guy. It's like, oh God, okay, thank you. So I've got lots of different things. I'm sort of glancing across to my whiteboard now and looking at them all and going, yep, there's lots of stuff. It's kind of like an analog Pinterest board, and I've got things that I want to do for sure. What I've got, when I say blessing and a curse, what I've got to also do is execute. So I've got to focus on the things that generate money for the business so I can go and do those other things that I want to do. So what I've got in the pipeline, I guess, is trying to solidify more recurring revenue. A lot of my business is quite transactional, probably in the vicinity of maybe about 55%, 50% is recurring. I'd like that to be a bit higher. And so my plan particularly for 2023 and beyond is get that recurring revenue, repeatable revenue a little higher and not be so reliant on economic conditions in terms of the variable and transactional revenue. So that's a focus. And the way I do that is kind of deliver more value to clients I've already got. So one client might have hired me to do one thing and I go, well, what other pieces of value can I provide to them? And, it's much easier to sell additional products and services to a client who is using you for other things than it is to go and find new clients all the time. So that's kind of like the backbone of the plan. And there's a few tactics in there that I won't kind of necessarily share today, but I like the idea of watch this space.
I can't wait to watch it. You mentioned before Seth Godin, absolute banger of a headline there, which is, first 100 customers will be people you know. You remember you said that to me not too long ago, and I can't forget it. It's staying very well, truly in my mind. There's the importance of networking, but that comes back to community and the community that's around you and looking to those people to be able to support you. So in wrapping up our chat today, my final question to you is, how can the listener and I, your little mini community here, help you on the next stage of your journey?
Oh, well, that's very kind. Look, I think one thing I do a lot of is LinkedIn. I think it's very it's a bit of a misconception about LinkedIn. I
love LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's awesome. Favorite. I really do. And it feels sort of almost uncool to say LinkedIn's awesome, but I think it is awesome because effectively what it is, it's your best opportunity to talk to an audience who could be looking for a product or service that you offer. And if you do it well, it costs you nothing, right? So I think I'm up to about 5,000 followers on LinkedIn, which I've just built over however many years LinkedIn's been going. So it's not huge, but I've got an active audience. So I try, and this is a discipline for me, like some people have exercise as discipline. My discipline is LinkedIn daily. So I try and share an article, post something. I try and keep my activity levels up. What I'd love to have happen is more people to share the stuff that I do. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, and I'm not one of those people that is a LinkedIn snob, if you reach out and ask a message or, send a message, I'll talk to you. So please do that. But if you see something you like or see something of value, share it for me. Sharing content on LinkedIn is kind of the secret sauce. There's so many things you can do and you can get lots of likes and you can get lots of comments. But when someone shares what you post, that's really a game changer. And honestly, I'm huge on supporting everyone too. So if you want a reciprocal arrangement where you go, hey, I'll share something. I mean, you don't have to share everything, but hey, I'll share something that I like, then I'll do the same back. I'm big on trying to use LinkedIn as a real community to promote people who can do good stuff and help people.
It really is a hidden gem, and it just continues to blow my mind how you're able to grow and connect and network on there. It's just a really fun place to play. So I'll make sure to have the link to your LinkedIn in the show notes so that listeners can go and connect with you, share all your things, get a little bit of inspiration. Wade, as always, I just love spending time with you and chatting with you. And it's been such a pleasure to hear your journey today. Thank you for making the time for me.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid. See you there.